Greetings again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of OSI Today, the podcast featuring news and views from around the Office of Special Investigations. I'm Wayne Amon from OSI Public Affairs, and in this edition, we continue our special series, My OSI Journey, which showcases the diversity and inclusion of our command-wide members. And today, I'm very pleased to be joined by retired OSI Special Agent and now Sheriff of Carson City, Nevada, Ken Furlong. Sheriff Furlong, welcome to the program. So glad you were able to join us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Now, the first thing I'd like to dive into here is something that I found very interesting on your biography, which says that you were born and raised in Carson City, Nevada, graduated from Carson High School in 1975, and now you're returning to your hometown as the sheriff. How did that make you feel? Did you have any idea back in your youth that you'd be returning as the sheriff?
You know, I remember the day, everything about it, the day I thought to myself, I was 6 years old, standing in front of the house. I met the Sheriff of Carson City, and because my father was in law enforcement, and he was just larger than light. And I knew right then this was what I wanted to be in life.
Wow. So he must have had quite an influence on you at such a young age.
They did. Law enforcement officers everywhere I went to, they had a tremendous influence. And of course, I was a pain in the butt too, but that goes along with being young.
Well, you were a kid then. That's right.
Yes.
Now, when and how exactly did you become interested in law enforcement and subsequently OSI? Now, you mentioned as a youngster, the folks in uniform had a profound impact on you. But was there anything in particular that told you this is really what I want to do?
You know, it had always been an aspiration of mine, and when I came out of high school and started a little bit of college, I knew I was too young. I knew I didn't have the experience. I always wanted to work for this organization, but you know, I entered the Air Force at 20 years old. Obviously, too young to be a police officer in the civilian community. I didn't have that education. I didn't have any experience. So I really used that stepping stone of the Air Force to begin my career, if you will.
I see.
And
now,
it took off from there.
Right. Now, I understand you began as in security police work. Is that correct?
That is. Started off in security police work, put a major emphasis on the education. And I got to tell you, commanders all the way through my career have really supported airmen going out and broadening their experience and their educational achievements.
Now, how did you become affiliated with OSI? Now, I can tell our listeners that you had a very interesting experience, kind of a chance meeting, I guess, wasn't it, with the commander, I guess, of the detachment at March Air Force Base in California that kind of turned you in the direction of OSI?
It was a chance meeting. A friend of mine, we were going to lunch. He had to drop off some paperwork at OSI. And of course, I went in with him and sat in the lobby, and the commander came out and he just struck up casual conversation with me. And all of that education and training and experience I had seemed to attract him. And he invited me for another meeting after that. It was totally by chance.
Wow, that and I guess it was very fortuitous, not only for you, but for the Air Force and OSI as well. Now, how did your OSI career begin? Now, you started at the academy like many special agents, is that right?
Yes, I did. Following the academy there in D.C., I went back to March Air Force Base. I had orders to go out to Seymour Johnson in North Carolina. I landed there, and as most people will say, you land on the ground running.
Exactly. Now, you've had various assignments within OSI, and in one of your bios, you mentioned that one of the major assignments that really kind of solidified your time within OSI came in Germany. Is that right?
Yeah, I was assigned to an operations group at Capone Air Base in Germany. That was a fantastic opportunity where we were a group of folks that were out there to assist other detachments, mostly in the cases of major crimes and narcotics investigations. But the unit really aspired to a lot of other OSI techniques that specialties that I got exposed to, and it was just a tremendous eye-opening experience. And it plays off today as well. Looking at the specialties of forensic sciences, computer investigations, counterintelligence operation, everything just opened wide open. It provided for an awful lot of travel. I loved traveling all the way around Europe, mm-hmm. And meeting and helping people doing what they do.
Wearing so many hats within your OSI career, was there one particular skill set that really caught your fancy, as it were?
I've always loved major crimes. That's my forte. I love getting into the interview room, suspect interviews, subject interviews. It is just the most fulfilling challenge that I can tell you. It's one-on-one with somebody, and you're getting them, as the trainers would tell you, you're getting them to expose themselves to something that they know is going to cause them harm. You have to get them to admit and bring forward a story that courts and prosecutors will use to draw a conclusion.
You mentioned the word challenge, Sheriff Furlong. Were there any specific challenges you faced once you became a member of OSI? And if so, how did you overcome them?
There weren't many challenges that were not overcome without the support of the peers and the commanders. I tell you, OSI is a very, very tight family group. And we look out after one another. We always did. We were there for one another, and so the challenges that came along the path, that peer group, those supervisors, the commanders, they were always there to support you. And we make mistakes along the path, or we get a little bit misdirected. But as a family group together, it was easy to come back into line.
I see. Very well said. Now, was there any one individual or maybe an event that inspired you to do your best in OSI? Now, you mentioned leadership was very key in your maturation process, if you will, within the command. Would that be a fair statement to say that the leadership was really the key as far as your inspiration to do well within the command?
The leadership was just unbelievable. I recall a particular homicide case that I worked, and the leadership of the installation of OSI was all there. They were supportive, but they knew exactly how to support me. And I tell you, that meant more to me and plays into my daily life here as the sheriff than anything else. Those leadership positions are there to make your job successful. And by God, they do it.
Wow. Very, very well said indeed. Now, what was the most gratifying part of your job with OSI? I know it's difficult perhaps to narrow it down to maybe one or two things, but in aggregate, could you tell us what was the gratifying part about, being part of the Office of Special Investigations?
Oh, Lord, there are so many things. So many. Coming out of the Air Force, I ended up in an unexpected role with parole and probation. Uh-huh. OSI taught me how to deal with people one-on-one. And I'm telling you, that was so gratifying. It was an unexpected. I loved working with teams. I loved working with groups. I did that all through my career. But working one-on-one with somebody, sometimes, and not too well of a circumstance for the other person, but those one-on-one encounters, not just within OSI, but with units assigned to the bases, uh-huh. They were so gratifying. I can't overstate it. I recall first working with many first sergeants, some of them becoming very, very good friends of mine.
Right.
It's those one-on-one encounters that really give you that lifelong feeling of achievement or accomplishment.
Is it fair to say then that your time within OSI was one of real interaction with people. It's a people-oriented type of a command that you need to understand how those people skills work to the betterment not only of like an interview, but to the Air Force as well.
Absolutely. Those people skills are critical. And I learned again from a little bit from the outside of OSI that you have to take a step back from your career or your job and really look at what you do to be able to define your talents or your strengths and weaknesses and how to go about. Your people skills are the upfront. And as we always were challenged, your contacts, both open and closed contacts that you keep as you go through your investigations, working narcotics or major crimes and such, those people skills get honed very, very well. Mm-hmm. And they're very useful further on down in your life with other careers.
Now, what years were you with OSI specifically? From what year to what year?
I believe it was, you're testing my memory. About 1989 to 1998.
Okay. So within that time, if you could do it all over again, with hindsight being 2020, is there anything you would change about your career with OSI?
No, there is not. I would suggest to you I was the most fortunate person in the Air Force. I worked for tremendous leaders. I worked for tremendous commanders. I worked around great teams. We became super friends, always there for one another. OSI provided me with a wealth or so many different experiences that it was just amazing. There is nothing I would change. And I have said that all the way back while I was in OSI. This was not, staying in the Air Force for 20 years was not an original plan of mine. Uh-huh. As I said, I intended to come back here, but it just fulfilled me so much that getting out was not an option. This was a fantastic organization. So many things, so many offshoots that you could go to. You could specialize in your assignments, such as polygraph or computer forensic sciences. Both of those were offered to me. But that fulfillment came in major crimes. I wanted to be the guy that the commander came to and said, "Here, I got a complicated one. Go do this."
That must have made you feel tremendous to know that he placed so much positive confidence in your abilities to produce.
It did. It really did. And as I sit here, now the sheriff for some time now, I see that character in many of my investigators. Everybody has a niche, if you will, in life, something that gives them that fulfillment. And I really do relate to those investigators that they want to be the guy that gets the hard case.
There you go. Now, you alluded to the length of time that you've been spending as a sheriff there in Carson City, Nevada. We originally got your story from a former commander of yours at Det 206 at Nellis, Bill Stevens, when you were the superintendent and he was the commander of that detachment. And he said he did a little research and he learned that you, Ken Furlong, is the second longest serving sheriff in Carson City, Nevada, and the associated county. And you're the 26th sheriff to serve in that post since 1861. But in such as a second longest serving sheriff in Carson City, Nevada, and I think you alluded to it before, what have you taken from OSI and applied it to being a sheriff that's served you so well as far as your longevity?
Oh, I tell you what, it's people, it's connections, it's being respectful of other people's opinions. It's keeping your organization going forward, as I put it, staying in front of the wave, stay in front of the tsunami, because the events that take place, in our jurisdictions or across the country, in OSI or outside, they can overwhelm you. And so having an organization that is prepared to take on any tasking whatsoever, any type of a crime, and working with other organizations very, very closely without a a need to pat yourself on the back. We're all in this together.
Right,
And I think
right.
OSI really taught me that because we work with so many other entities, the FBI, ATF, and so on and so forth. Working across that board, across jurisdictional boundaries, working together as teams, that's what OSI brought me, and that's what I use every single day here. We want to always be in front of the technology. We want to always be in front of the intelligence. We want to always be capable of creating strategic plans that are going to satisfy the public.
Now that leads me nicely, I think, into my next question. As someone who worked in OSI for many years and now look on the outside looking in, what direction do you envision OSI going into the future? You mentioned things like technology and all the things associated with that. That must be a big part of the way forward, I would imagine.
I think so. As I was ending my career after 20 years, OSI was making a lot of changes. That the flexibility of addressing the worldwide events. Obviously, we had the Gulf Wars and such going on, and OSI was always prepared to take that next step into their operations and contribute back to the Air Force what they could. That is an essential piece of our strategies. You have to be prepared for the unexpected. OSI did it very well. OSI continues to do it very well. I've been out of the picture now for over 20 years, but I see that as a continuing strategy of OSI, always staying out in front and being prepared.
One thing that's really gotten a lot of play lately, last few years, is diversity and inclusion. When you were within OSI, how did you see diversity and inclusion be a building block to the success of the command?
It's challenging. I came from a small town, obviously, way back then. Mm-hmm. Not much travel growing up. The Air Force opened my eyes to inclusion and diversity. It was a wonderful way of life. We want to attract people in based on their talents, and it really helped me grow, but it also helps the Air Force and OSI grow as well.
I see. Now, you alluded to something just a second ago as far as drawing people into the organization. Let's put your recruiting hat on for a second here, Sheriff. What advice would you give someone who would like to join the Office of Special Investigations?
That's a pretty simple one, and it's a basic philosophy of mine. I do it every day here. You encourage young people, education, training, and experience. And I cannot overemphasize education. You must apply yourself to the universities, the colleges, because really what surprised me in my career was the opportunities that opened up, the doors that I didn't know existed as my education accomplishments were achieved. I just had no idea. Yes, I was getting the training from the Air Force. I was getting the experience. I was growing. But those educational accomplishments really opened doors that I had no idea existed before.
I see. I guess, experience is a great teacher. And I guess you would subscribe to something like that. Is that right?
That's right. It's an amazing teacher. Yes.
Now, is there anything else you'd like to add, Sheriff, before we wrap things up?
I've looked back at my career, and one would say it's been somewhat successful. I've achieved my lifelong goals. I intend on being the sheriff again and surpassing the one gentleman who's been a little bit longer than me, only by 2 years. I look back at my career and I consider myself to be a very, very fortunate young man. I've been able to bring my family with me around the world. I've been able to experience things that I never knew I would be able to, and achieve those personal goals that have just been so wonderful in life. OSI and the security police organizations really did myself and my family very well, and we could not be more thankful for that.
Well said, Sheriff. Very well said. Our guest has been retired OSI Special Agent and now Sheriff of Carson City, Nevada, Ken Furlong. Sheriff, thanks again so much for taking the time to be with us. It was a treat to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Wayne. I appreciate it.
And thanks to all of you listening for tuning in. For OSI Today, my OSI Journey, I'm Wayne Amon saying so long for now.